The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and so excited to be here with you guys. Now that we're in September, isn't this just like the craziest how fast this year has gone? Here in Los Angeles, it has been record heat this week, and so everybody's just sort of surviving. But I do want to say, as we start the show, that over the weekend, my son and I had the opportunity to go to the SLUMU Institute. And I'm going to talk a little bit about slime and why it's called the SLUMU a little bit later on. But we had such a good time. In fact, we're going to invite the owners and the creators of this institute to be on the show because they're in more cities than just in Los Angeles. But I'm telling you, there's nothing like going into a lovely air-conditioned place and being just like able to play with tons and tons of slime. And I took a shower in slime. You don't have to do that, but I did, and it was delightful. Anyway, for those of you who are keeping track, it is Monday, September 9th, 2024. We are live right now. We have an amazing guest who's going to be joining us in about 16 minutes or so. Michael Gilberg is going to be joining us. He's a special education attorney, and he is a self-advocate. So he's going to be helping us to understand things in a way that we really need to understand them. He'll be joining us soon. It is back to school time for a lot of you, and you guys have been sending me a lot of questions about your rights. I'm appalled with what some of the schools have done this year and the way that they're sneakily trying to find their way in, out, and around having to be there for your children. It makes me sick to my stomach. Let's say that. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I mentioned that we're live right now, and that means that we're live on several different platforms, and you have the ability to interact with us right now. Our fabulous Chris Desmond at some point will show you some of those places on the screen. I'm just going to remind you that we are live on Facebook, on YouTube, and Twitter, and probably a dozen other sites as well. For most of you, you are listening to us later on in podcasts, and we are available as a free download wherever you get your podcasts. It is, as I mentioned, a free download, which means that ads will play. He's showing you right now, for instance, iHeartRadio. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're everywhere you get your podcasts for free. Spotify, you can download. And we do encourage you to subscribe so that you get notified when we do live shows. I do want to talk a little bit about the advertising, though, because we do the advertising on the podcast pretty much like everybody else does, right? But many of you had requested that you'd like to have a version that you could subscribe to for a very small monthly fee. We have that for you now. That's at glow.fm/autism-live. And when you go there, not only is it Autism Live, it's everything that the Autism Network does, including Ask Dr. Doreen. It's $5 a month. It's actually cheaper if you pay for it for more than a month at a time, like for a year subscription. I think the price then goes down to something like, $3.95 or something like that. Don't quote me. But it's actually cheaper for you if you do it that way. But you get those. They immediately come to your inbox whenever we do a new show, and you get them free of ads for having defrayed that cost, because it does cost us to do this. We are constantly looking for clever ways that we can get the information to you for free and keep the lights on, right? That's a lot of my day is trying to figure out how to keep the lights on. But so thrilled with some of the things that we have coming up here. We have, like I said, Michael Gilberg is going to be joining us this morning. But on Wednesday, we are finally, knock on some serious wood here, because every time we were about to have Andy Bondi on, something happens. And I don't want to curse us, but we're planning on having Andy Bondi on Wednesday. And if you know that he and his wife were the creators for PECS, the Picture Exchange Communication System. Huge, but that is just a portion of what Andy Bondi has done with his life and his career that he has devoted to our kids. So thrilled and excited. He's one of the nicest people on the face of the planet. So very excited to have him on the show finally on Wednesday. Okay, all of those things. Can I just tell you? And we didn't talk about this before, Chris. We can't show the All Ghouls Gala promo, can we? No. We'll show it to you tomorrow during Ask Dr. Doreen. We'll unveil it then. But tickets are available right now for the All Ghouls Gala. What is the All Ghouls Gala? Autism Care Today, which is the wonderful charity that was founded by Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh from Ask Dr. Doreen. She founded it with the mission to help families who are dealing with autism. And you know what it's like, you guys, that sometimes it's like you're having to count your pennies and go, okay, we have to have the roof over our head. We have to put food on the table. We need this equipment for our child, for safety equipment. We need an iPad. We need all these things. And we have copays. And how are we going to afford all of those things? I remember the Christmas that I sat there on the 1st of December after I paid rent. And I was like, there's not enough money to buy his medicine, get him a toy, and have a Christmas dinner. There just isn't enough money in the well. How are we going to do this? So if you're having troubles like that, you should know about Autism Care Today. Wonderful, nationally recognized 501c3 charity. They've given away over $2 million in support for families for things that they need. So there's not a limit. If it's something that will benefit your child, you can write in and fill out the grant application and apply for a grant. The grant cycle is open right now, although there was a problem with the website this morning. So I encourage you to keep trying because it is open right now until October 8th. And you can fill out a grant application. And part of it is that you describe what it is you want. Please understand that ACT does not give money to a family. They pay a vendor. So if you say my child needs an iPad, you write in about the iPad and where you'd like to buy it from. If your grant is chosen to be funded, they will pay wherever you said you wanted to buy the iPad from, right? Same thing with fencing. You want money towards an assistance dog. The maximum grant you can get in a calendar year is $5,000. So if you're asking for something that is more than $5,000, you want to tell them in the grant how you're planning on paying for the rest of it. Because they don't want to give you money to just sit in an account and wait for the rest of it. They want to make sure that the money goes someplace that can actually help your child. But I love that they let you tell them what your child needs because everybody doesn't need the same thing. One child needs sensory equipment for their bedroom. Another child needs a fence to protect them from eloping, right? And another child needs an iPad to be able to have a voice. And another child needs a grant to be able to go to a camp so that they can learn how to code, right? All different things. I'm going to sneeze because that's what's happening this morning. Excuse me. Sorry, that was terrible. And thank goodness no one is in the studio with me. Okay. I don't know what that's about. But I do want to say that we have to raise money for those grants. That's the thing. Constantly every year we're raising money so that we have more money to give more people the things that they need. So the big fundraiser of the year is the All Ghouls Gala. Is an adult, only adults, Halloween party. And think about that. How many Halloween parties are there for kids, right? Don't you wish you could go to an adult Halloween party? Well, we have it for you. And it's a star-studded affair where there's always honorees. I can't disclose who the honorees are yet this year. But it is a star-studded affair with a red carpet and everything. There's dancing. There's a DJ. There is an open bar. There is gourmet food off the chart. This year, we're returning back to the original location of where we did it the first year with the original caterer. So for those of you who have been to the first two, we're returning back to our roots. And it's going to be absolutely cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And we're raising money for autism. So if you want to go, the tickets are available now on Eventbrite. All you have to do is go to Eventbrite and put in All Ghouls Gala. It's the 3rd annual. Make sure you're buying tickets to the 3rd annual. You shouldn't be able to buy tickets to the 2nd or 1st annual, but make sure and get your ticket because it will sell out. It is a limited number of tickets that we can have, and once we reach that point, it will sell out. But I hope to see you there. I will be there, and I will be having a good time. It is costume mandatory, and I'll tell you, it has become the costume contest in Los Angeles. I was so amazed last year with the level of the costumes that we got. All Ghouls Gala tickets are available now. Good morning, Autism Journey with Elijah. I'm so glad you're here because I know that you're going to love our guest. So I want to get to the jargon of the day because I do have this amazing guest who's going to be with us. As we've said many times, almost all of you are back to school. I think everybody officially is back to school today, right? So what better thing, since we have a special education attorney with us, to talk about FAPE today. So our jargon term is FAPE. So let's take a look at our first definition, which I'm starting to pick the AI overview for these because it's very interesting, right? This is what AI overview said on Google. FAPE stands for Free, Appropriate, Public Education. That's what FAPE is. It is a federal law that guarantees that children with disabilities receive a free public education. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which is IDEA, and the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 are the federal laws that protect this right. I really appreciate this definition because it hits the high points, right? For all of us who've ever had a child who is differently abled, there is that shiver that runs down your spine about, is my child going to be able to go to school? And this law says yes. And we're going to find a way for it to work for your child. I don't know about you, but when my child got kicked out of his early autism program, yes, that's true. I remember thinking, what's going to happen when he goes to school? Is he going to get kicked out of school? And it was thrilling to me to hear that these laws were in place so that my child could not be denied a free, appropriate public education. Now, of late, I've been hearing about schools who have been saying, oh, well, your child is in our special education program, so it's only $400 a month that we need for you to subsidize. No, my friends, no, that's illegal. It is a free, appropriate public education. Now, for years, I have talked about this and said, the word that's important in this is appropriate. That's the one we're going to argue about. But all of a sudden now we got to talk about the free, because free means free. And apparently there's some people in some school districts who don't understand that free means free, but that's illegal. I think that's called extortion. I'm not sure. We have a lawyer coming up. We'll ask him. But so I like this definition, but let's go on to our next one, which was, I got this from the Summary of Educational Rights from the Department of General Services, California.gov. I like this. FAPE means special education and related services designed for a student's unique needs. And I appreciate that because it specifies that it's for their unique needs. But get this, because I love this, this is referencing a very important Supreme Court case. The student's education must be designed to help the student make progress in school. This is just a few years ago, the Supreme Court ruled that de minimis was not sufficient, that the minimum was not sufficient, that the child had to be making progress. But also, how much do we love this sentence? Special education must also be designed to help the student learn skills for independent living. Now, why is that important? Well, so many of you will write to me and say, how do I fight to get a one-on-one aid? And we have that discussion. But a lot of you then will say, okay, so we got the aid, but we're having a problem at lunchtime because the aid is given their lunchtime the same time as our child is given lunchtime, which always mystifies me. I always used to sit in IEP meetings and they would say, well, the aid has to have a break at that point. So they'll have the break. And I would say, oh, of course the aid needs a break. I'll just tell my child not to have autism while they're on the break. And everybody would kind of be like, are you being facetious? Yes, of course I'm being facetious. I understand your limitations, that you legally have to give this living, breathing person a break. But if we've determined that my child needs support throughout the day, then that is your logistical nightmare. And that means you have to hire a person to be with my child during lunch. And schools don't like to do that. They just don't like to do that. That's more money for them. But this helps us to be able to put that through. First of all, it's a safety issue. That if my child needs support, then my child needs support. But also, part of what you're supposed to be teaching my child is how to be prepared for independent living. You're also supposed to be preparing and setting them up to go on to employment, right? So I can make the argument that if you're supposed to be teaching them skills for independent living, then that means that you need to be supporting them during lunchtime, which means I'm going to write a goal that I want you to put into the IEP, and now you have to have a person there. Wah, wah, right? Schools are always looking. I mean, that hour costs them money. I don't care. There is nothing in this that says only up to a certain dollar amount. Thank you very much. We were just talking about Lewis Black, and I feel like I have Lewis Black fingers today. It was like, you know how when Lewis Black tells a joke and he like has his wagging fingers? That's me today. But this is important. This is the basis upon which we get what our child needs, all of which we're going to be discussing with our guests today. Because think about how much time your child spends in school and what your priorities are during that time. Well, of course, safety, right? Undeniably, that has to be a priority. But education is there to help our children to learn and grow and get to a place where they can be independent. And that is true for our kids too. And isn't it lovely that we have a couple of laws that encompass that and give us a platform on which to stand to help support our children? It's miserable. We have to fight. It's absolutely miserable. I was so excited the last IEP meeting that I ever had to go to, and I was like, woohoo, I don't have to do this anymore. But it's a worthwhile fight because it makes a difference. Good morning, Lucy. Okay, Lucy says, I recently received the district notice regarding my child's triannual evaluations. I have not returned it. My child is 7 years old. After reviewing the information, I want to explore the option of doing a records review instead. The reason for this is because the child already had several IEEs conducted last school year, including, speech OT, psycho ed, FBA. If the triennial's purpose is to determine if the child is still eligible for specialized academic instruction, then my answer is yes. Child already went through so many outside assessments last year with IEEs paid by the district. Need advice. I do not want the district to reduce services. Child has made significant progress, is doing really well. I'm afraid the district may use the triennial to disqualify my child if the district, I can't talk today, if district proceeds with their so-called triennial assessments. We're going to ask our guest here in just a second about that. I would think, I'm going to just say from my opinion that, one of the things that if you have had outside evaluations, those evaluations can't be done within a calendar year. And I would think that they would qualify, but I'm not an attorney. But we happen to have one who's going to be here right with us right now. Let's talk about Michael. I have his bio on my phone somewhere. He sent it to me and I had it open and then my phone closed. Okay. Michael Gilberg is a special education attorney and autistic self-advocate, first diagnosed at the age of 18. Michael devotes his legal career to representing children with disabilities to ensure they get the appropriate education that they are entitled to under the law, which he was denied. Michael serves on numerous boards and committees, including the Council of Parent Attorneys and Advocates, which I always talk about here, COPAA, the Autism Society of America's Council of Autistic Advisors, the Westchester County Advisory Council on People with Disabilities, the New York State Independent Living Council, Autism Spectrum News Editorial Board, Parents United Learning, the Special Education System of the Mid-Hudson Valley, New York State Autism Spectrum Disorders Advisory Board, and the Hittles of Westchester. Michael also has years of political and policy experience in government and advocating for for disability and public policy in New York State and Westchester County. I'm so proud and excited that we have Michael here with us on the show. Good morning, Michael.
Morning, Shannon. Can you hear me?
I can hear you wonderfully. We can hear you great. Were you able to hear that question that I just read that somebody wrote in?
Part of it. I don't remember all of it.
Okay,
but I heard
we'll go
parts
back
of
over it.
But By
Michael,
the way, I must say your events. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Speak.
Your events sound amazing. It's too bad they're only in LA. You've got to have New York events as well.
I know. We need to be bi-coastal, but that's what planes are for, Michael. Come visit us. So, Michael, so thrilled to have you here. And I know we've wanted to have you on for a while, but I think it's really opportune that you're here today because it's fresh in everybody's mind right now. IEP.
Oh, it's that first week of school.
Oh, it's just... Now, here in LA, some of our kids have been in school since, the 13th of August. And so we're getting closer to that 6-week time period where they were going to try things out and evaluate for 6 weeks and then do IEPs here. So I know it's a little bit different in New York. I'm originally from upstate New York. So I very much appreciate that your folks just went back to school. Ours have been back to school for a while. But
you need to define upstate since everybody has a different definition of upstate.
Thank you. Well, so I spent most of my formative years in Saratoga, New York. That's where I grew up.
That would be upstate. I live in Westchester County, just north of the city, and I've had people from the city call it upstate, which it's not.
Right, exactly. No, I'm true.
It's all about perspective.
True upstate, but Westchester County is one of the most beautiful places on the face of the earth, and you're about a month away from having some of the most beautiful colors in the world. So you need to come here, but I need to go there.
Yes.
Maybe we trade places for just a couple of days. Anyway, so Michael, diagnosed at the age of 18, and you say you were denied your rights in school. Talk to us a little bit about what you're willing to talk about with your story and why you're so passionate about this.
So growing up, you still there, Shannon? You disappeared for a second.
Yes, you're full screen now, but I'm still here.
Okay, so growing up, I was put in special ed, and they didn't know what to do with me, the so-called experts. They bounced me around from special ed program to program, constantly saying I didn't fit, I didn't belong anywhere. And, I always tell the story that when I was in 6th grade, I was in a special ed program, and I had one friend in the class, and he told the social worker something in confidence, and the social worker repeated it, and he never trusted an adult again. And meanwhile, they said he was fine. He was ready to go back to public school, sent him back. The social worker told my mother I would never graduate high school and to throw me away.
Wow.
Fortunately, my mother did not listen to him. This kid went back to public school, and the day before his 16th birthday committed suicide.
Oh, it was so sad.
And I, meanwhile, went on to high school, college, law school. So, as I say, the social worker failed me, but failed him worse.
Yeah.
And so looking back as an adult, I see all the mistakes that were made. I even to this day will tell my mother sometimes things she could have done differently. And she's like, what do you want me to do? It's 40 years ago. But the IDEA, which is the law governing special education, existed as far back as 1975, 2 years before I was born, as the Education for Children Handicapped Act or some previous name. They changed these names around. Yeah. And so the IDEA existed, but unfortunately, my parents didn't know their rights back then, as many parents today still don't know their rights.
Yes, I mean
and so they bounced me around, and I didn't get a typical education until I went to college, and I had to catch myself up and fill in the gaps that I was not given in school. And not every kid is going to have that motivation to do what I did. Sorry to cut you off.
No. I'm having a tickle, and so I apologize. I'm coughing a little bit, but it's not you. You keep talking because what you're saying is amazing, and we all need to hear it.
That's what I was saying. That's where my passion comes from.
Okay, fabulous. So you did go on to go to college. You did go on to law school, and now you have a practice. Tell us a little bit about your practice, and because there might be people who are watching who need your services right now? You practice law in the state of New York, I'm guessing.
New York and Connecticut.
Okay. And what kinds of cases are you particularly interested in if there are people that are on here who may want to reach out to you?
Well, I practice special education, so it's children in New York and Connecticut who are not getting the appropriate services under the IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Again, since this is autism specific, autism cases are my passion. I do a lot of autism cases. I also get ADHD, learning disability, mental health, but autism cases are really what I would say is my bread and butter.
And Michael, it's this interesting thing that you're a self-advocate. When people come to you, do they automatically know that, or do you disclose that, or is that just...
It's on my website. It's on my website for people to see if they want to take the time to read it. Okay. I don't tell them automatically, but if they've read my website, it's there. It's sitting right there for them.
And I would just guess that you are that much more effective at what you're doing because you have a personal understanding of it.
In general, yes. I mean, there are challenges sometimes, difficult clients, or cases where I get very personally passionate because I see the injustice. There's one school board attorney in particular who will try to provoke me because he's just a bad person.
Yeah.
And so he will intentionally try to use my disability against me, but I don't let him. But there are those challenges that go along with it.
How amazing. I just want us all to stop and reflect for a moment on what you just said, that this dirtbag is somebody who's trying to provoke you and trying to take advantage of your disability, but how amazing that you have the perspective taking to realize that that's what he's doing and you don't allow it to happen.
Well, and also, I allowed him at a hearing once to make the fool of himself, and he cursed me out instead of me cursing him out.
Good for you. Sounds like an Aikido move. I absolutely love it. So, Michael, I hear a lot from parents all over the place during this IEP season about, and I see trends that are happening. And especially here in Southern California, we have this new heinous trend that a bunch of people, when they were having their children start school, they registered their children in March here, notified them that there was a child on the spectrum, and the school did nothing, even though that's not the law here or anywhere, and then informed the parents in a meeting right before school that they were going to have them go into a general education. This is the first time these little kids are going to school, that they're going to have them go into a general education setting for 6 weeks while they evaluate them while they're in the classroom, and that then they will determine if they're eligible for an IEP. Have you ever heard of anything so ridiculous?
Oh, I haven't. And again, I can't give legal advice, obviously, on here.
Yes.
But it sounds very peculiar to me. Are you saying these are 6-year-olds in first grade for the first time?
In kindergarten, 5-year-olds.
Kindergarten. It does seem odd. There should be early intervention and what are called birth to 3 services. There should be some background. But if you suspect the child has a disability, you don't just throw them into general ed.
Yeah. Well, and I asked because I've already reached out to the Department of Education in California, and they have said that those parents need to file grievances because that is completely irregular. I just wondered if it was, we see it happening in Southern California, and I just wondered if it was everywhere. So I'm glad. What kinds
Not that
of,
I know of.
Okay, what kinds of things are you seeing? What shenanigans are you seeing?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, you're fine. I'm the one cutting you off. It's hard in this format. But what are you seeing in that you really want parents to know that you're seeing is happening in your area?
Well, we see a lot of these cases of parents school districts insisting they can meet the child's needs when they really can't, because, as you said in your introduction, a lot of it is about money.
Yeah.
And it's all about, as you described the word FAPE, the slogan FAPE, the appropriate is always the fight. Your definition of appropriate and my definition of appropriate are not necessarily going to be the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where we lead to a lot of our problems. But I see a lot of trends of parents of districts not wanting to outplace kids because they don't want to spend the money. Districts trying to, make the child one thing that I focus a lot on is kids on the spectrum who are academically fine, but really struggle emotionally. And the school will say, oh, he's fine, he's fine, he's fine, he's got A's and B's. And then the kid tries to commit suicide. I've had cases where I always thought of this as a hypothetical till I got a real case. Where the kid actually tried to commit suicide, and the district was surprised because he had good grades and they weren't listening when the kid said, I'm struggling emotionally.
Yeah. Yes. And are you seeing, because we see this here, that if the kid is doing well academically, getting A's and B's, that they try to say that they're not eligible, they don't meet the educational needs to be eligible for any services.
I've seen that, and it's not true. Again,
right.
A child on the spectrum can do well academically and still have social emotional struggles. Yes. And to function in this world, which is the goal of education, it's not just about academic knowledge. You need to have the social emotional skills to cope with people. Yeah. You can't. I made the comment: the child can't access his education if he's dead, if he commits suicide. I mean, it's an extreme example, but the law is the child has to be able to access his education. Well, you can only access your education if you're in an emotionally okay place, so to speak.
Well, I don't know if you know, I used to work in the public school system. I was a teacher. I taught college too, but then after 9/11, I went back to teach in public schools for a couple of years before I had my son. And, we've just seen evidence of this last week with another terrible school shooting. That the thing that's first and foremost is that you cannot teach a child if the child isn't safe, and if the child doesn't feel safe.
And unfortunately, it turns out one of the victims was on the spectrum.
I know.
And they mistakenly identified him originally as the shooter, I believe I read.
Oh, how horrible. It's just devastating. I don't know what the answers are to all of this, but I do know that if a child is sitting in a classroom and they don't feel safe, whether that's from bullying or because they have fear of something that's going to happen, or they don't understand what's happening, then you're not going to be successful in educating them, because that's a barrier that you have to get through first. So key to everything is that our children have to be safe. I
always lecture, special education is not just academics.
Thank you. Thank you so much for what you're doing, Michael. Now, we do have questions coming in. Is it okay? Do you want to answer a couple of questions?
I'm sure. I'm happy to, and I will remind, and I have to put the disclaimer, I can answer questions, but it doesn't constitute legal advice.
Exactly. So Lucy had written in and said that they're asking to do the triannual for her child. But everything has been so contentious in the last couple of years that the school did pay for IEEs as recently as a year ago, in this last school year, so maybe even less than a calendar year ago. So she's wanting to know about, can she request that it just be, instead of a triannual, be a review of the reports that have been done recently, and what kind of advice would you give for that?
We can ask. The school, though, still can order evaluations if they so choose.
But they can't, correct me if I'm wrong on this, they can't do evaluations that have been done by another agency within the calendar year. Isn't that still correct?
Depends on the evaluation, and I'm not a clinician, so okay. I can't speak to that. Some evaluations have that restriction, some don't, and that's something that would need to be asked of a clinician.
Okay. And she can ask that of a clinician. Her main concern is that she feels that they're asking for the triannual because they want to prove that her child no longer qualifies for an IEP. Do you have any advice for that? Because she can certainly argue that socially and emotionally, he's not ready to exit his IEP.
That's the answer. You've got to have social emotional development as well as academic. The social emotional development needs to be at grade level or on par with their age. And the truth is, any child with autism will always have needs and require an IEP. The idea that any child with an IEP should be exited from special education is kind of nonsense. You don't outgrow autism, or you don't, let me rephrase that, you don't you're not cured of autism. You learn to cope with it, but you don't outgrow it, and it's always there. So there's no risk. So that child will always have goals and things to work on.
Amen to that. I agree completely. Anna has written in and said, my son caused an injury. With so many being sue happy, how can I protect him and myself in case people sue for an accident? Example of the accident, my son was finishing his occupational therapy, and while walking down from the second floor to the first floor, while I was waiting for him, his toy fell from his hand and fell to the first floor, hitting someone in the head. So far, there was an incident report, but I was wondering if this happens again and people decide to sue, how do I protect my son and myself? My son is 7 years old. He is autistic and nonverbal. We use an AAC device to communicate. I know that you're a special educator.
I can't answer that. That would be a personal injury attorney. That's outside my knowledge space.
I appreciate you saying that. But I will say, Anna, that most people, I've had it happen where a person who was a viewer, it was an OT that got injured and they sued, and her homeowner's policy is what paid it. It's bizarre, but I do know that the homeowner, their home policy is what paid for the suit. So definitely talk to a personal injury attorney about how to protect yourself for that.
Yeah, that's just something. I mean, if it happens at school, it sounds like it's the school's responsibility, but I don't want to give advice on this because, again, it's not my expertise.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But we live in scary times where things happen. And I appreciate wanting to protect yourself for that. And maybe we'll have a personal injury attorney on to talk about that kind of thing, Anna, because it has been a subject more and more. So, Michael, I want to go back to, there are so many things that you feel passionately about. You mentioned that a lot of times parents don't know their rights. And I find that, we don't, and that over the years, every year I would learn like another piece and I would go, oh, I didn't know that. What kinds of things, you have parents that are watching and listening right now, what kinds of things do you want to tell them to help them set their kiddos up for success?
Please tell parents, don't take what the district gives you at face value. So many school districts, and it's unfortunate, it's about money. And I hate to say it that way, but it's about saving money. And your child is just a number to them. While they're the most important thing to you, to the school, in many cases, they're just a number. And these administrators are dealing with budgets where they're having pressure put on them by the school board, to keep the taxes down. It comes down to the taxes. But I always say, your society is going to pay now or pay later. We can pay now through special education, or we can pay later when the person doesn't achieve independence and has to live on public assistance.
Thank you. Yes. I want to say, because not that long ago, somebody wrote in and said, Shannon, you say you're a former teacher, but it seems like you're pretty down on schools. And I do want to say that I'm not down on schools, and I'm sure you're not down on schools in their entirety, Michael, because I find that most people, not all, but most people who are teachers are people who, listen, they could be making a lot more money with the skills that they have doing other things, but they care passionately about their students. But a lot of teachers are beleaguered right now because they've been through COVID, and they are not given the support that they need to teach the kids that they have. They're not given access to things that would make it easier for them to teach. So I don't have a beef with most of the teachers. I want to be on their side. However, No, say what you want to say. You're the guest.
I think most people get into teaching for the right reason.
Yes.
I think they then get restricted by the administration, and when they work their way up to be administrators, it becomes very hard because, there's this pressure of keep the budget down, keep the budget down.
Yes, I agree. That's exactly what I was going to say. That when people go to be administrators, and usually those are people who taught for a little while and then went to be administrators because there's more money in that. And then they are told to be the watchdogs of the budget. I will say that from my perspective, if we don't get IDEA fully funded ever, we will continue to have these problems. We're about to have an election. Yes.
As you said, I'm on the board of COPA, the Council of Parent Attorneys and Advocates, which is the only national professional organization of attorneys and advocates in special education. And in fact, our conference next year is in Irvine, so hopefully we can get you guys over there.
Yes.
That being said, the problem is, despite lobbying extensively, the federal government promised to fund 40% of IDEA. They've never hit 20%.
Well,
so the burden falls back on the states and local government.
We had promises this in the previous election that it was going to be not 40% funded, that it was going to be fully funded. I hope.
Well, fully funded means 40% of what's called the excess cost. There's a whole formula. It's 40% of something specific. I don't know all the numbers. I'm not a budget person.
But we need it funded, and
it does need to be fully funded.
And, when we have elections, it's a perfect time to talk about it. So hopefully we will hear something tomorrow night in the debate about education and special education. That's my hope. Crossing my fingers.
Unfortunately, the problem is I think a lot of people don't realize education includes special education. And one thing is, without getting too political, there's been talk of abolishing the Department of Education.
Yeah.
And I fear that if you abolish the Department of Education, there will be nobody to enforce IDEA.
Yeah.
You need a federal department to do it, because then it becomes a state-by-state basis of who's enforcing IDEA, which is a federal law.
Yes, this is a very important election. Thank you. Autism Journey with Elijah has written in and said, when my son was in public school, it was a horror movie. I fought the good fight day after day. The school lost track of my son. He was sent to a calm corner multiple times, always coming home with negatives and so forth. He was always doing something quote unquote wrong. Right before I went to file against the school, I pulled him out of school and started homeschooling. He is in a private school online and in a small class. He is doing way better now than he was in public school. He is on an ESA grant. My question is, should I still keep the IRP or completely get rid of it? I think IEP. As of right now, it is not required, and he does not have a current one. How do I get a current one if I desire to get one? The public school is not associated with his past school district.
I mean, you have to go to the public school district where you live to get an IEP. They're the only ones who can give it to you.
But, and this question, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, this question came up the other day, that when you take your child out of the public school and you put them in a private school, then my understanding, and I don't know if this is an area that you know much about, Michael, my understanding is that your public school is still responsible for your child and that you can still maintain an IEP there, but the private school does not have to follow it. Is that correct?
Correct.
Oh, now the sneeze is to you. It's contagious.
Sorry.
No, I did it first.
No, the public school still has a responsibility. And the problem, I will say, that I find with homeschooling children on the spectrum is that they don't get the social skills.
Well, I will say that I don't know. I think for this kiddo, I'm not sure, but I know for a lot of people in California that do this, they do homeschooling for part of the day, but there are some things where they go and do social activities. Like I know where I live, there's a drama program that if your child is in the homeschool, you can choose all these different things, and they get together and they rehearse a play and then they perform the play. So they do get a social component, and there is a portion of their day that is spent with other kiddos, but not the whole day. How do you feel about that, Michael?
I think it depends on, it's as with everything else, it's very individual. It depends on the child. I always say there are so many things that we deal with that we can't make universal rules. People often forget the I in IDEA stands for individual.
Yes. Amen to that. But this mom did write back and say that there are programs that her son is in that are specific for him. Gymnastics and orate, which I don't know if that's like debate or something like that. So there are finding ways to get around that social component for homeschooling, because a lot of people are choosing it because they're having trouble getting the school. Now, I think the sad thing is that then the school becomes off the hook for the financial. They also don't get the funding for it, but they're off the hook for everything except the IEP, and they have to maintain the IEP. Is that correct?
Correct. The school district where you live, where the family lives, so the school district of residence has to maintain an IEP.
So for her right now, even though he's doing a private school and doing the homeschool, she should still go back and have every year an IEP meeting.
Protect her legal rights. Well, she can't really go back, but every year, but as long as she's lived in that district.
Okay, so she should ask for the triannual when it's time for him to be evaluated.
Yes. The district should evaluate, and she should not give up her right to have her child evaluated.
Okay. All right, so hopefully that helps you, Autism Journey with Elijah. So what else, Michael, is on the list of things that you wish parents knew?
I think parents, one thing that I find is a big issue is parents obviously often want outside testing, which I agree with, not school district testing. And they'll go out and they'll pay for their own private evaluation before they hire an attorney. And what ends up happening is that the parent pays $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 for a private evaluation, not knowing they have a right to let the district do their evaluation and then request an independent educational evaluation at district expense. And so they come to me and they are struggling because they're like, they need to get some of that money back, and it's a lot harder for me to get the money back after the parents have paid than to get it prospectively.
Yeah. So logistically, if you're having issues with the school and you're a little bit lost, I think what you're saying is it makes more sense get the attorney first who can help you to get, so that you're not paying for things you don't have to pay for.
To navigate, exactly, because so many parents will come to me and have already made 2 or 3 mistakes that I have to figure out how to clean up.
Okay. I have always said that if at all possible, the earlier you can afford to have an attorney on the case, the better. Because if you go in with an attorney when your child is kindergartner, then they realize you're playing serious business. And a lot of us find that as you go through the years, you don't need an attorney every single year. The school starts to straighten up and fly right. But many
Exactly. And I think one mistake parents make is thinking that attorneys make the situation more contentious and more confrontational.
Exactly.
And it doesn't have to be that way. Very often I come into situations where the parent and the school district are at such an impasse, and myself and the school board attorney, because it's somebody I have a relationship with after years, if they're reasonable, can work it out and be that bridge.
Yes. I think you've hit it right on the money, because I hear from so many parents, they say, well, I don't want them to think that I'm going to be a difficult parent. I don't want them to take it out on my child. And I felt that way too when I was like, also I was struggling to be able to afford it. But there is this idea that I don't want to appear to be that parent. And I see parents go through a phase where that's the thing they're worried about. And then something finally happens that makes them so mad that we let that go. And go, no, I am going to be that parent. I'm going to be the parent who shows up and advocates for my child, and I'm going to bring an expert with me because I see that you were trying to get away with something and cheat my child out of something that he was legally entitled to. So I encourage parents, get over it sooner. They can't retaliate against your child, right? What happens if they retaliate against your child?
Well, they can, but it's illegal. But you have to prove retaliation, which is often hard to prove.
Okay.
I've seen schools do things because they don't like a mother or a father.
Like what? Give us an example.
Not give the kids services, blame the parent. I've seen schools actually tell mothers sometimes it's your fault your child has problems.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen a school district call CPS on a parent when there was no need.
Oh, I've had that happen numerous times.
Yeah.
Schools, and even when the school, hold on.
Yeah.
When the school district knows that the kid is out of school for a specific reason, they will call Child Protective Services and file educational neglect.
Yeah. And And all the more reason why you do need to have a lawyer or an advocate who knows what they're doing, you guys, because sometimes it becomes hardball. And these are our kids.
And I've had, unfortunately, with hearing officers who've said, well, the school was obligated to call CPS. We don't see no retaliation, when it's clear cut that it was retaliatory.
Yeah. But in the end, the law is in our favor, correct?
In theory, yes, but a lot of the problem, at least in New York, is the fact that hearing officers, at least in my experience, tend to be pro-school district. A lot of them are former school board attorneys. Oh. And then we have an intermediate level of review in New York called the State Review Office that tends to be largely pro-school district.
Interesting.
And so it's a lot of depending on the hearing. The problem is also the hearing officers in any state are hired by the education department. So it's kind of like the fox guarding the hen house, so to speak.
Yeah.
Well, they're not as independent as they should be.
And as Autism Journey with Elijah, they just wrote it and said, also make sure that everything is documented as best you can. It does help you fight when you need to fight. What do you want to say about that?
I always tell parents, if it's not in writing, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we get into these he said, she said with the school districts, and we can't prove anything. It's your word against the school districts.
Yeah. And I find that...
And the problem...
Go ahead.
Sorry. And the problem is, again, if it's not in writing, it doesn't exist.
And I found that a lot of times what they'll do is they'll wait until you're picking your child up, and they'll pull you to the side in the hallway or outside school, and they'll say, just want to let you know. And they'll say something that later on you can't prove because they said it. Now, I'd love to have your advice. One attorney said to me, anytime you have a conversation with anyone, that you need to make a record of it and send an email and CC everyone on it and say, as per our conversation today, when we stood outside. And when we stood outside and you said this, and then they have to deny it. Is that?
That's generally a good practice. In some cases, I've heard parents who've had tape recorders in their pocket and have tried to record people, which can be considered shady if they don't know they're being recorded.
Yeah.
And the law in every state is different. Some states, it's one-party consent where you don't need the other person's consent. In some states, they're two-party consent.
Is New York a two-party consent?
New York is a one-party consent, but I don't know about other states.
Well, I think California is a two-party, but I'm not 100% sure.
Right.
But, yes, documenting as much as you possibly can. I also tell all of our parents that when they go to the IEP meeting, to sign that they were there on the attendance page, but to never sign it at the actual event, because I've seen so many mistakes made in the report that they took and that they delivered to the parent. How do you feel about that?
Well, absolutely. So many times there are mistakes in IEPs that you have to get them fixed later. You know, I often have to say my name gets misspelled, and that's easy because they don't object to fixing that. But when it's content-based, that's a real problem, that the IEP doesn't necessarily say what was said in the meeting. And the only recourse you have is to record the meeting.
Yeah, how do you feel? Because I always tell parents that when they reply saying that they're going to attend the IEP, that they say, and I will be exercising my right to record at that point.
I think parents should do that in these cases. It used to be much easier when they were all in person, but now, I mean, I do all my IEP meetings virtually, which works great, but it's a little harder to record because usually the person running the Zoom has to be the one to record.
But you can record it on your phone, correct?
Yeah, the quality's not going to be great, and leave it near your computer. You can try that.
Okay. I had a parent just a couple of weeks ago that she had written to them and said, I want to record. She got to the IEP meeting and the school district said, well, we're going to record, so you don't need to record, which I thought was really shady, because normally what happens is the parent records and the district says, we're also going to record so that we can compare notes and nobody can doctor the tape. But I found that really shady that they told her not to bother to record because they were going to have a recording. What do you think about that?
That is very shady. I've had cases where we've done it on one side and shared it, but that's only with board attorneys I trust.
Right. And these people,
the attorneys I don't trust, I would never do that.
Horrible. Okay, I have another question for you, and it probably is different in New York than it is in California, but I've been asking everybody about this. we understand that if you live in a certain place, your child's homeschool is for that place. But sometimes the parents are separated or divorced, and there is shared custody where the child lives sometimes with mom and sometimes with dad. If they're in different districts, how do we decide which district is going to be the district?
If it's based on who has primary custody.
Okay.
And if they have shared custody and nobody's primary, that's complicated. I think that's something you need to talk to probably a matrimonial attorney as well.
Okay. Okay. Good to know.
I mean, it's where the child spends the majority of their time, which whether it's even if it's 100, 182 days versus 183 days.
Okay. Okay. Because we're seeing school districts that are desirable school districts turning down children who have a parent living in that district saying, sorry, we can prove that your child doesn't live there 100% of the time. They're hiring private detectives to prove it.
If they're splitting time between the parents, it's not about 100%, it's about 50%.
That's what I said. Okay, but they're getting attorneys here. So when do you say to people, because I think there's a little bit of a thing about, okay, well, I might be able to fight this on my own. When should they get an attorney or an advocate, in your opinion?
When they start to realize that they're in over their head, or they don't understand what's going on, or they need guidance, or the district is refusing to do independent evaluations.
There you go. What is with that? I see all of a sudden now that districts are saying, no, we're not going to do an independent educational evaluation. We like our evaluation. We stand by it. And no, we're not going to do it. What's the recourse then?
It's about money.
But what do you do as a parent if they say no, if they deny you the IEE?
Well, then they have to file for a hearing to defend their evaluation.
Okay. The school has to do that?
That's a point where you probably need an attorney as well.
Amen. I also think that for anybody whose child is starting school, that you should at least go in and have a consultation with an attorney, because I find that there's so many things that the parent doesn't know until after kindergarten is started. And then they go, why didn't somebody tell me?
Well, at least parents of children with disabilities and special needs, yes.
Yeah.
And there's a lot that they don't tell them because, as I said before, it comes down to money.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And schools don't want to spend the money. The administrators are talking about their budgets.
Yes. And also... And help me to know if it's the same in New York as it is here. Every time you go to an IEP meeting, one of the first things that they have to check off is that they presented you with a document that was your rights. And I find
procedural safeguards.
Yes, most of us do not read that, but that's a really good document filled with really good information if you can understand it.
Depending on the district and who wrote it, yes. And it's something where the district, in theory, is protecting itself by giving this to you.
Yeah. But I think they count on us not reading it, Michael.
It's usually a very large document.
Yes. Yes. And there's a bunch of nonsense in it, but there's some stuff that's gold in the ones that I've gotten. That it's like, oh, it says right here, you can't do that to me. Okay. So, Michael, if people want to reach out to you, we're almost out of time here. If people want to reach out to you, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
The best way would be my website, which is michaelgilbergesq.com. Again, that's MichaelGilbergesq.com. And there's a contact form on there.
Okay. And Michael, I have to say, what an amazing resource you are for our community. Having been through this and having the understanding of what it is like when you don't get these services, and being able to share that must be a wonderful gift for all of your clients. But thank you so much for sharing it.
I'd like to think so. And I want to thank you for all you do with this channel in the community, and just also say that, for so long, the people doing this representation were parents and others, but now there's more and more autistic attorneys, and it's something we're working on. I'm working with others to hopefully bring us all together under an umbrella and have an Autistic Attorneys Association because there are a lot more of us out there than people realize.
I love that. Well, please keep us posted about that. We'd love to talk more about that. And thank you so much for being available on this Monday morning. I'm sure that I know you're busy and I know that your time is valuable. So thank you.
I appreciate that. And it's Monday afternoon for me still.
Oh, there you go. That's right. It's later where you are. Well, keep fighting the good fight, Michael. And I also want to say thank you to your mother for not listening to anybody when they said what they felt the limits were going to be. And thank you for continuing on.
I'll let her know that. She'll appreciate it.
Yes. Yes. None of us do it perfectly, Michael, but at least she saw that you were going to go a lot further than that, and she believed in you, and that's an amazing thing. And you believed in yourself, too. So thank you.
No, thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, you have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Shannon.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. What a delight and what a wonderful resource. We'll have to have him back on again. If you came in late, I just want to say that we let it be known that the tickets are available now for the All Ghouls Gala, which is happening on October 26th here in Los Angeles. It's an amazing off-the-hook party that raises money for grants for things that families need. There is the link. www.thirdannualallghoulsgala.eventbrite.com. Go there and get your tickets. There's also a place on the tickets that if you are not able to attend for yourself, you're able to make a donation or to donate a ticket for someone locally, and you can put right on there and say, I would like for this to go to an autism family to be able to go and represent on behalf of you. We're always happy to do that. I think, thank you, Rodney, for being here. Thank you, Anna, so much. And thank you, Autism Journey with Elijah. And thank you, Lucy, for writing in. Hope you guys got answers that help you to go back and know what to ask. All right, we will see you tomorrow for Ask Dr. Doreen. We've got a great topic. I don't remember what it is. And we've already got some great questions. We do take pre-questions if you want to get your question in. But we will be live in the studio with Dr. Graham Pichet, so you won't want to miss that. And don't forget that on Wednesday, Andy Bondi is going to be joining us for the first time ever live on the show, one of the original creators of PECS. And he's done so much more for the autism community. I'm just thrilled and delighted and honored that we're going to have an opportunity to talk with him on Wednesday. So, but tomorrow, Ask Dr. Doreen. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now. If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much. See you next time.